Dino Ball,
Dino Ball,
Dino Ball,
Dino Ball,
Dino Ball.
Dino Ball, episode 46, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. We just had a pod, but we're back. And familiar faces with us today. We're here with Chris. Say hi, Chris.
What's up, guys? How are you?
Doing good, doing
Doing
good.
good.
We had Chris a while back, and he has gracefully agreed to come back
I've never done
and
anything gracefully in my life.
well, it's awesome to have you back, Chris. Thank you for coming out and agreeing to do another pod with us. We have a lot of fun topics we want to get your opinions on. So, you guys ready to just kind of jump right into it?
Let's
Yeah, I'm
do it.
ready.
All right. So, for those that don't know, Chris's specialty is the Red Sox. So, it wouldn't be, a pod without mentioning a little bit of some Red Sox. So, the Red Sox were in on a lot of free agents. They were pretty, heavily in on guys like Bregman, Fried, Snell. So, like, I want your opinion, Chris, from what you know and just from your side of it. What was going on with the Red Sox? Why did they kind of strike out on some of these guys? Can you give us any insight?
Yeah, they got beaten by deeper pockets and guys who went to teams that were willing to get a little bit more uncomfortable. I think there's a narrative here that the Red Sox were only in on the Soto thing just to say they were in and fool their fans. But when you offer a guy 700 million, you have to be ready for him to take 700 million, and they did that. They put their best foot forward. They were hoping, against all odds, I think that Steve Cohen and the Yankees would, both of those groups would stop their bidding around where they ended up. If all three teams get to 700 and Soto, maybe with David Ortiz's blessing or maybe with his family being Red Sox fans or the Dominican history in Boston, whatever it is, would end up choosing them. And they ended up going to 700. The Mets went to 765. And, I thought from the very jump, all the talk about he's not going to take the highest offer was complete bullshit. Um, if a team in Japan came in with 770, he was going there. So I just think that it's not that was a useless exercise to think about all the other factors that were going on. At the end of the day, as you guys know better than anybody, Cohen won out because he bid the most, but the Red Sox did try. From there, they pivoted immediately. They threw a lot of money at Max Fried in an offer. They tried for 190. The Yankees got more uncomfortable and went to 217. That was just an old-fashioned Red Sox Yankees bidding war that they lost. And from there, they decided like we're going to get an ace come hell or high water. Snell was off the board, Fried was off the board, and like within 24 hours of Fried going off the board, they acquired Crochet. It's a good move. It's an aggressive move. It's going to help the team a ton. They didn't have that frontline guy. It pushes everybody back in the rotation. Hauk is no longer counted to be a one. He can be a three. Now that they have um, Crochet and Bueller ahead of him. Same thing with Bayo, Crawford, Giolito's back in the mix after missing last year. It's a good rotation. They fixed the what they had. Where I get off the train with what they did is when you go get Crochet and you haven't spent the money. They get Bueller for a year and 21 million. Um, that means you still have all the money to spend, right? Like because you've gotten Crochet, who is only making 3 million or 4 million next year, you have the money to spend. And they haven't done that since. And I think fans are pretty confused about that. To me, it was always Teoscar Hernandez as the best fit for this team. They weren't really meaningfully involved on him. They weren't involved in trying to re-sign Tyler O'Neill. They have a huge glaring hole from the right side in their lineup. The top two guys that they could be in on still are Arenado and Bregman. Until those guys are off the board, I guess it's still possible, but it seems like they're waiting for a really good price on either of those guys, money for Bregman and a trade for Arenado. So at this point, I think they started the offseason out being in on everything. They lost out on the high money pursuits, struck an aggressive trade for Crochet, and they've been trying to let the market come to them ever since. And I think that's just a flawed strategy for a quote unquote big market team that hasn't acted like it for years.
Yeah, that's happened. Something similar has happened with the Mets. To in that they signed Soto, the biggest free agent of this offseason, and they did that. And while that's good and well, they still haven't addressed other areas that they're lacking in right now, and they're planning fully to go into 2025 with all prospects in their infield, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine, but the never ending Pete saga and going back and forth. It's just it's been taxing, and a lot of fans are left like kind of in a similar way. Like, kind of, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna do this? Is there gonna be a reunion with Pete? Are we gonna have Pete for the future, or are we gonna go another direction? Are we gonna go to a Vladimir Guerrero direction next year? Are we gonna pivot to having Mark Vientos being there full time? Like, what's the exact plan of action from here on out? I think that's what a lot of Mets fans are looking at, just as a lot of Red Sox were looking at. Oh, we have all this money. Why are we not going out and getting the guys that we need to make this team better?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I just like my read is from afar is, only Mets fans could could see that they landed six top 50 free agents, including the best player to be available and the biggest contract ever, and still not be happy with it. I mean, I like, what do you need and what do you want? So, and they do have good young players there. Like they've signed, obviously not Alonso, but add to the rotation with Manaya and Montas, and that's kind of how they've been building this rotation, short-term veteran deals. Clay Holmes, we'll see what happens there. Minter, a lot of teams were in on him. There's like 8, 10, 12 teams in on him. Um, so, any team would love that offseason. So I just think the bar has been heightened, and that's just the Steve Cohen effect. When you expect to
yeah,
go out and it's the Mets and the Dodgers. The Mets are willing to spend more than anybody, and the Dodgers are right there with them. And even the Yankees this offseason have been up at that level. Um, with getting Fried and Goldschmidt and Bellinger and Williams and the guys they have. But, um, it just goes to show you what a motivated owner can do. But I would have, other than, Alonso being a familiar face, like if his profile was out on the market and he had worn a different uniform for his entire career, Mets fans would not be really obsessed with the package. That's just the reality of it. People like their own players. We're seeing the same thing play out in Bregman right now in Houston. As I said to you right before we started taping, I'm not really involved in going, minute to minute on either of the markets, especially Alonso, because the Red Sox are not involved there. And on Bregman, they, have a limit where they're not really willing to go past 4 years, and he seems to want six. Like someone else wrote this, I think Tim Healy at Newsday. But like if until you see a divorce with either one of those pairings, I'm not going to believe it. Like I'll always have the Mets most likely to sign Alonso as long as he's out there, and I'll also have the Astros most likely to sign Bregman as long as he's out there. I mean, there's a lot of negotiating through the media that happens. So when um, Dana Brown in Houston says we lost Alex Bregman, I mean, you haven't really. You can put it in those terms. If Steve Cohen can go and put Boris on blast at, the whatever day that was at Citi Field, that's great. Until he signs elsewhere, the door is not closed. And those things don't affect negotiations. If they circle back and come to terms, they come to terms. And that whole, Boris Cohen, that's just smart businessmen negotiating and using public perception as a leverage play. So again, with both of those guys, I always feel like the more time goes on, the more we get into spring training, they're going to get antsy. Boris is going to have to give them something. And, you see a lot of times the home team ends up pulling those out.
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I agree because I just always envisioned Pete to be a Met, and even though despite what Dana Brown had said, I can't imagine Bregman anywhere else. And we will touch on Bregman a little bit later. But you were saying, Zach?
No, no. I was just gonna say the whole the whole Pete drama. I want to get into to more dive more deep into that later on too. But yeah, no, I agree. I agree with what you say. Mets fans, they can tend, including me, I'm at fault to it a lot too, can tend to see like, oh, it's great. Like we had a really good offseason, signed all these good players. Um, but then just move on to the next thing and not be grateful for what we accomplished. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You guys remember the Will Punt era? Jesus.
yeah, I know. I remember that era, and it was not fun. It was not fun. We would never get anybody, and now that we're actually getting somebody, expectations are set pretty high, like you said. And we want. I want Pete Alonso back. Truthfully, it's not even like a we thing. I don't know. A lot of people would like to have Pete Alonso back. I'm one of them, but I kind of want to have Pete Alonso back at the right price, and I don't want him to get paid 30 plus million dollars and like an overpay of the century with a bunch of years on his contract. I don't want that. I don't. I think that sets us back actually. Um, but I'm okay if if the Mets decide to really just come back and just say, look, we're gonna keep all the assets we got. We're gonna keep everything we just added this offseason. And they're like, we're just gonna go in with that and try to get maybe Vlad next offseason, see what's cooking with that, and focus on the future. Because honest to God answer, Vladimir Guerrero is 100% without a doubt the better option. And I'm not just saying that because, you know, of the two difference in like talent wise. I'm saying that because he's 20 something years old and Pete, Pete's getting up there in age, but it's age is Pete Alonso has been a part of this group for so long now. And I've become very attached to him, but if people can't see the brighter picture or the bigger picture in the future, then everything's kind of like a mute to what's going on. But that's just kind of my thoughts on it. But also, I want to get your thoughts, Chris, on the AL East, how it's shaping up, especially now with all the Red Sox moves that have been done. Do you think the Red Sox are going to be up there in the AL East, or are they still going to be lower on the totem pole? Um, and are the Yankees winning back to back AL East championships, or is it going to be a different story this time around?
I'd have the Red Sox third. Right now, I think the Yankees are clearly the class of the division. I think the Orioles, they have the young position players. Some of them underperformed a little bit last year and dealt with injury, but you still have all those guys. They obviously lose Corbin Burns, which is a big deal. I don't think that can be understated, but when you look at, who they have, Charlie Morton's a guy who could, give you a pretty good year until he's 65 years old, and that's kind of what they're banking on. Tyler O'Neill is a guy that I just, had an up close look at. When he's healthy, he can be a game changer from the right side. Gary Sanchez should add some power. They obviously added Kittredge to their bullpen. So, like, more moves around the margins, kind of in, not the Burns replacement, pound for pound, and not the big move like they did last year when they got him. But to me, you look at, the guys they have in that lineup still, from Gunnar to Adley to, Cowser, it's Westberg, and people forget Jackson Holiday, just because he had a little bit of a down stretch, and Grayson Rodriguez in the rotation. I still think they're, an excellent team. The Rays, I think, to me, I always say, they could put the three of us on this pod and six others in their lineup and find a way to win 81 games. So that should always scare you. I think that there is some athleticism that they bring to the game at the Trop, where they build the team to fit the ballpark with the turf and never bad conditions. I think that could be a change. I think there is a home field advantage there. I have to look at the numbers, but just seeing it and seeing the way they play in athletic fashion there. And then I just think the Blue Jays, they have crazy long odds, like on DraftKings Sportsbook, not an ad, just looked at it, to see like where they'd be in the division. To me, they still have what could be an elite rotation because they have a lot of guys that, are veterans and have been there and been aces before, from, Bassett to Gaussman to, all the guys that they've, Barrios, you name them. They also have this cloud of Vladdy and Bichette's last year if they don't extend either of them. And to me, when you have those guys, you have a city kind of on edge. That's why they've been so aggressive this offseason of trying to start, whether it be the Soto era or the Sasaki era at the same time the Guerrero and the Bichette eras might end. That 1 year overlap, that's why they're trying to go all in. They didn't get guys A, B, C, D, E, F, or G who they tried for. They did end up with Santander. And I think they're a team to watch. And obviously, both Alonso and Bregman, they're trying. Um, but that's a team where if they're hovering in contention at the trade deadline, they're going to go all in, all in. And I mean seriously all in because, again, Vladdy's a free agent, Bichette's a free agent. They're going to be in the situation they're in. Where last year they tore it up at the deadline. This year they are going to really try, and this is it. And the GM is going to be trying to save his job, and it's going to be, a situation like that. They're a team with nothing to lose. That should scare you if you're, the Red Sox, Yankees, Orioles, and Rays. So again, the Red Sox are in third. They won 81 games last year. Internal improvement should make them win more games. They have two top five prospects in baseball who are going to be candidates for the opening day roster, and Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell. They have Crochet and Bueller, like I talked about, who are really going to help. They're going to be likely horrendous against left-handed starters, and that is something where you can get exposed in the postseason. They were last year, and they lost Tyler O'Neill, who was very good against them. And they're so, unless they add somebody from the right side, that's going to be a huge weakness on the team, just like it was last year. But if you kind of go position by position, there's not too many places where you're not, a little bit at least excited about who you have there. At first base, you have Casas, who's a good player. At shortstop, Story resurgence, with Campbell coming up for the middle infield, maybe at second. Devers is obviously at third in the outfield. Duran was one of the best players in baseball last year. Abreu won a Gold Glove as a rookie. And you have Rafaela, who is center field, could be a very good defender, and if he stops swinging and missing at everything thrown his way, could actually provide offensively. So I think they're, right in the middle of the pack in a crowded American League as of right now. They're a wild card team that could push for the first or second wild card, and anything can happen once you get into the playoffs. They better just hope they don't face two or three lefties in that round.
That is
Yeah.
true. Anything can happen in the playoffs, and I know a little bit about that. But Matt, go ahead, finish what you were saying.
No, yeah, as someone that's also experienced the AL East and as a non-biased Yankee fan, I truly think that the Red Sox are going to be a lot better this year. You say you have them third. I could totally see them maybe even getting second in the division. I mean, it really all depends on how the Orioles are. I've said it many times. I totally agree. The Rays just have devil magic. You can put
Hmm.
whoever they want, and it's like same thing with like other teams. Like I feel like the Brewers and Guardians in a way kind of fit in that threshold as well. You kind of
I
just
think
give
it's
them
just
who.
smart baseball ops, really.
That's true too. They have really smart people working for them, but like they also
Hmm.
just have little sprinkle of fairy dust in there as well. Like it doesn't
Right.
matter. They're just always really good. And like you said with the Blue Jays, I agree. I think they're gonna go all in. They've had like a solid off season in terms of getting certain people. They missed out on a lot of people, but they were heavily in and they wanted to spend money. You got Santander, you got Scherzer recently, Jimenez earlier in the off season, and I do think if they have any bit of sniffing the postseason, they're definitely going to go all in and capitalize what they can with Vladdy and Bo, because this could be
Hmm.
the last time we see them on the Blue Jays. So the AL East is going to be a really fun matchup this season. I do still have the Yankees winning the division. I'm not trying to be biased. That's just how I think it's going to be. I think they had a good offseason, but I do think the Red Sox are going to be a very fun, sneaky team as well, and I think they're going to make a really good push in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean it's about time. I've covered two playoff series since in the last 6 years. In 2021 they won the ALDS and lost to the Astros in the ALCS. I mean, it's a ridiculous standard when you're Boston and your fans have those expectations, and they've lost the fan base. The fan base dislikes the Red Sox, and for good reason after kind of what it's been like for the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, that's rough to not win a championship or not even to get to that point in like 6 years that you've been covering it. So, um, but besides that, we also have some Bregman news, and I know we wanted to touch on this before. You know, you have to make a an exit, but Bregman Bregman to the Astros is not looking as good as people may think. And I know you said that as long as he's still on the market and he's available to others that people there is a chance that he always will go back to the Astros. Now, I'm never saying never say never with them because it could happen. They could find that wiggle room and get a deal done. He could return to the Astros as quick as the next day. But at the moment, it's just not seeming like that because you got Dana Brown at their annual media luncheon, just talking about Alex Bregman in the past tense. Talked about him twice in the past tense, and also mentioned that they lost Bregman, which is not necessarily true right now because he's still available. Um, and then he said things that they've had internal conversations about Bregman, about the matter. that haven't really gone anywhere because he hasn't spoken to Scott Boras. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like a roundabout thing that it just hasn't seemed to happen. Just like Pete Alonso and the Mets just it seems logical. They don't want to be with each other. Alonso wants to be a Met. The Mets want Alonso. Bregman, I would like to think, wants to stay with the Astros, and I would like to think the Astros would still want him back. But it just hasn't a deal hasn't been done. And I guess partial of that is because of his market and how it's shaking up with other teams like obviously the Red Sox are in on him, the Chicago Cubs. Um and one of the bigger threats that I think is the Detroit Tigers. I think that the Tigers have a very good, solid chance of landing Alex Bregman with what they've done so far. I mean, they're looking for that right-handed bat right now. They're looking for another solid, good right-handed bat. Alex Bregman would honestly answer a good amount of questions for that squad. Plus, you added Jack Flaherty back, which we're gonna get into that too later. But you added Jack Flaherty back to a rotation that's already pretty decent. You got prospects coming up, and the biggest X factor, which is Jackson Jobe. He could play a big part in that rotation this year. So I honestly see him. I could see him going to the Tigers because of what they've got there, what they've built there. Um, and I could have the Tigers honestly being a favorite to win the Central, the AL Central. So. I don't know, Chris, if you had a pinpoint, obviously besides the Astros, because you mentioned how you felt about on that, if you had to pinpoint maybe a location for Bregman, what's your second best odds besides the Astros?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, the Blue Jays being motivated to add another bat is a factor. Seems like the Cubs are too. The Tigers for sure with AJ Hinch is, I think, the biggest factor there in the familiarity. I'd put all those teams ahead of the Red Sox right now. I just don't think they're willing to go past 4 years, and I think a team is. I don't think he's going to be the guy who settles on a short-term deal and risks regression and then does this all again in a year. I think he wants 5 or 6 with opt-outs just in case, and I think he'll probably get that elsewhere, whether it be the Cubs, the Blue Jays, the Astros, or the Tigers. I really tough to handicap past that.
Yeah, Bregman's really a wild card right now, and he's could go a numerous of different places. But obviously, if the Astros are still available and they're still in the mix on everything, never say never. That's my motto with Bregman and the Astros. But I don't know, Matt, if you want to add, go ahead.
Yeah, speaking with Bregman to the Astros, there were reports that like they would move Paredes to second. You put Bregman at third, and even Altuve would go to left field. I think Zach, me and you, we've talked about that before. Honestly forgot about the Cubs as being a suitor as well. Bregman is just a name that we've been hearing so much this offseason, and I don't know. I could see the Cubs, I could see the Astros, I could see the Tigers, I could see any of it. I just don't know, like with all the information, where to pinpoint it. He could fit in any team. It just really comes down to what team is going to cave and what are they going to give him. Because, pitchers and catchers are reporting, sooner rather than later, spring training is going to be around the corner. I'm sure Bregman doesn't want to fall into the same category as guys like Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery, where they sign with the team super late. And then at least Snell kind of picked it up, but Montgomery kind of fell into this hole where he had a really bad season, probably one of his worst years of his career. And whether that's because he joined the team late or not, that's up to you to, do what you will with that information. But I definitely think Bregman is going to want to sign soon. And just personally, I just don't know. I don't know which team it's going to be.
Yeah, no, he's very eager to get a deal done, just as Alonso is. They both are looking to sign with their teams uh, early on, or try to be there early on before spring training starts and really gets underway, and things like of that nature. But Bregman's just we're just gonna have to wait and see. Just like Alonso, it's just a waiting game. That's all that Boris really is a waiting game because he will not settle and will not have his player or his client sign a deal unless it's what he thinks they are worth. And clearly he's got a bigger picture maybe in mind for the two of them. I know Alonso, he values Alonso pretty high. and thinks he deserves $30 million a year, where in some other cases, I don't necessarily think that Pete Alonso is worth $30 million a year. So, um, with that being said, we're gonna move on to our next topic. But Chris, I do want to thank you, appreciate you for coming on and all the time you've given us. We hope to do this again, first week in March or something like that, or sometime in March, just to talk before, the regular season starts to get underway. But yeah, we really appreciate you coming on and doing this with us.
Anytime, guys. Keep up the good work. Thanks a lot.
All right, I'll see you next time, Chris.
Big Chris, thank you.
So
All right.
besides that, we do have to get into Jack Flaherty and the
Yeah.
Tigers. And now I just mentioned it, and their lineup, with their rotation with Flaherty is actually pretty impressive. So just to start off, the deal is 2 years, $35 million a year with an opt out after 2025. They have also, like I said, I've also mentioned this just a second ago. They are still interested in Bregman. We'll see how that shakes up. But in terms of Flaherty, I'm kind of shocked that he didn't go sooner. I'm not gonna lie.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
it's a guy on the market that, did his time last year. He was really good last year. He was part of the Dodgers World Series run. Um, and he's been a really reliable pitcher for a while now. And the Tigers had him, and they did what they needed to do, and by trading him. But now they got him back, and I think this is just such a feel good story, almost, just because he initially didn't have the chance to do what he wanted to do in Detroit. But now Detroit's gotten better. They landed other options for their rotation. They've landed Gleyber Torres. They're just really looking for that one more bat. And I think they could get that with Bregman, but again, we've already discussed heavily into that. But now the Tigers rotation currently with their addition of Flaherty is Scuball, Flaherty, Alex Cobb, Casey Mize, and Reese Olson, with a potential Jackson Jobe to come into that rotation eventually. So it's a good rotation, honestly. Like Alex Cobb and the other two rookies, Casey Mize and Reese Olson, they've had their ups and downs. But you got a really good 1-2 start to that rotation. They could even build upon that, and Jackson Jobe could be that third guy too. So they may have already three pieces to the puzzle while they're trying to figure out the other two, or everybody could pull through and they could be looking pretty solid. I wouldn't expect the only person I really wouldn't expect too much from maybe Alex Cobb, because I think he's reached that window of,
Yeah.
of peak for his career. But besides that, the Tigers are looking pretty good. And you know what? I honestly think that they're like one bat away, one righty bat away from just making it into the postseason again, making a deeper run, and potentially maybe even winning the AL Central.
Hmm.
So, Matt, what's your thoughts on the Tigers' newest addition?
Yeah, first off, a lot of Tigers fans were like somewhat disappointed when they traded him because they were making a push, but that trade is honestly kind of what helped them because you got a guy like Trey Sweeney who really, Yankee legend by the way. Trey Sweeney really kind of helped them, like push them over the edge. He was playing great, and now you get Jack Flaherty back, and I'm sure the Dodgers would do that trade 10 out of 10 times. They won the World Series, so to them it doesn't really matter. But you got Trey Sweeney, and now you have Jack Flaherty back. It's a great addition for the Tigers. And in terms of winning the AL Central, I mean, they definitely have a chance. It's anyone's race. I'm not going to commit to them saying they will win, but you got teams like the Royals, obviously, they were phenomenal. The Guardians won it last year, and as we were talking about with Chris, I believe they're one of the teams that have devil magic, so it doesn't matter who you put on their team, they'll always be good. And now the Tigers are really starting to make a push, and Jack Flaherty is a great step in the right direction. They have a great rotation. Him and Scuball are really close. They're like buddies. Scuball was so happy Jack Flaherty's back. Um, but like you said, I agree that I'm surprised he didn't go earlier because he's a great pitcher and he's not even like demanding too much. They got him for 2 years, $35 million contract, opt out after 2025. I am truthfully surprised that no team jumped on that sooner.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking because again, like you just said, he wasn't asking for a lot of money. He
Mhm.
was asking for, I wouldn't say the minimum, but like honestly, I kind of picked him for going more than 15 a year, more than 15 million a year. That's what I thought that he could have made this year.
Yeah, it's a
But
great contract. Yeah.
they at most, if he does really good this year, puts on a show, does great with Scuba on top, he could opt out after this year. So it's a good thing for the Tigers, good thing for Flaherty that he's finally on a roster, just like some other people might want to be right now. But I think it's a really good deal for the Tigers. I see them being a pretty good team. They're going into that direction. And I think that a lot of people have to start to accept that more and more now that the Detroit Tigers are going to be a team to be reckoned with the more and more we get into this because they're just they have a young core with like some veteran leadership sprinkled in. That's usually like a pretty good recipe for a World Series run. So they're looking really good. They're getting there, and I think they will be a really solid team in the future. But the more and more they add to the team, the better they're gonna obviously get.
Mhm.
Now, with this next one, right? We just touched a lot on it with Chris, and I'm still pretty just shocked. We could touch a little bit on it. I'll do a little spiel thing, and then we could just go on to the next topic, Matt. Okay. But nevertheless, Pete Alonso talk just in general.
Yeah.
Now, I just wanna I kind of want to get your thoughts too on this. Um,
Sure.
he wants to go home. In fact, there was a report that you know people from WFAN, Evan Roberts specifically, maybe heard or thinks that Alonso told this to Scott Boras, saying, "I want to go home, and you better make it happen." So I feel like at this moment in time that there's a lot that's been done between the two parties, between Alonso and between the Mets. There's a lot done. Some may think it's too much damage done between the two. I don't. I think there's a solid chance that they're gonna be able to get him back, but if they do, again, like I said, I want them to get him back on their terms, not on his terms, on their terms. If they could get him back for like 23, 24 max, maybe a mil a year, they get him 23 to 24 million dollars per season, I'd be on board with that. I'd be on board with that re-signing. I think that's really good for them. And he's been a part of our team since the beginning, since he was a rookie, and I've grown attached to him, and he may not be the best thing. He may not be the best option out there, but I feel like in my heart of hearts that, you know, in terms of chemistry, in terms of the way things work with the Mets, um, he could potentially be, one of the better options.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think he's a really good player. He's been really good for the Mets for the longest time now. And if he wants to go home, and if the Mets want him back, I think they should make it happen, regardless of what the differences are. Um, I don't know, Matt. What's your thoughts on this?
So at this rate with Pete Alonso, I I don't think it was necessarily this is my honest take. I don't think it was as important to him to want to go back home. I think maybe now he wants to, but I think he just realizes that if there's any shot of him getting what he wants, it would be with the New York Mets. I don't think any outside team would be willing to give him, the contract that he wants, whatever Boris wants. So I think he's now maybe having a little bit of some regrets with how he handled everything, which is kind of makes him want to go back. I mean, they got Soto. You add Pete back to that lineup. Vientos continues to break out. Maybe Brett Beatty becomes David Wright. Like, who knows, man? I don't know. So I still think that he'll be a Met. I just don't like know any other realistic team that could go get him. Um, like what team? I mean, the Rangers maybe. Like
There's
Mariners definitely need a first baseman. Like I don't know.
Rangers, Mariners, Giants were definitely another team. Nationals were a potential team. Um, I forget there's another different team that was gonna offer him like, oh, the Angels. There you go. The
Mm.
Angels were gonna offer him like 4 years, $100 million, and that's cool. If they want to do that, that's the route they want to go, and he just decides to go there for the money, then by all means, go ahead. I just don't understand the fact that people thought he was going to sign the other day, and then he didn't, and then people thought he was going to sign 2 days ago, and he didn't, and he hasn't found that sweet spot to go sign with another place. And I don't know what it is that's gonna make him. I guess it's the money. It's the money combined with the years. Like he's not getting the years that he wants. And I don't understand. Just make the decision. Make a decision so that at least by the end of the day, not only Mets fans could just sleep at night, but like baseball fans in general could stop worrying
Mhm.
about these free agents. It's not really mainly about Mets fans. Um, it's about all the people that see Scott Boras clients and see them wait until literally like days into spring training to sign a contract, and it never happens because Scott Boras doesn't let his clients do whatever they please. It's whatever he thinks they're worth and the amount of years that he thinks they deserve. And that's how it is. And I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like how he goes about and he does this with his
Yeah.
players. It damages the game because and it also damages them, which could have an effect on the way Cody Bellinger played last year too. If you think about it, if you go back to last year, right? Cody Bellinger is one of our main topics throughout the whole offseason. Cody Bellinger couldn't sign a deal. And because of that, he missed a lot. He missed a lot of spring training, right? He wasn't with the team. Then he finally signs with the Cubs, and we're expecting him to have pretty monster year like he's done in the past. He just didn't do it. He just didn't do it last year. And not to say that he had a bad year. He had a decent year. It wasn't too bad, but he could have done better. He didn't play to the extent that I think that he knows he could play to. So, Boris, I really urge you to urge your clients to force your clients into making a decision. Make a decision. I just want to be put to rest. I want everything to be put to rest. I want to know what's happening instead of wonder what's happening. Um, that's my thoughts on the whole Pete Alonso thing. And we don't have to go into it anymore. But this next guy, I know, again, I think we mentioned this with just a second ago with Chris. We just want to get a little bit more into it. Max Scherzer goes to the Blue Jays. He goes to the Blue Jays for a 1 year deal worth $15.5 million. What does this mean for the Jays? Is it put them maybe in a better spot? Potentially, yes. I do think their rotation is significant, not maybe not significantly better, but it definitely is better. I was sitting over here, really just thinking. I was just thinking that they didn't really have that great of a rotation. And I thought I was right until I did some research
Mhm.
and going through all the guys they have in that rotation and the
Yeah.
potential, the ceiling that they could get to. They got, like as Chris said, they got pretty much a good amount of aces. They got people, guys, veteran guys who have been there, who have done it. Their rotation as it sits: Scherzer, Gosman, Barrios, Bassett, and maybe Mania as the fifth guy. I know they have some rookies they could put in the fifth spot, but regardless, if that's what we're going with, Scherzer, Gosman, Barrios, Manoa, and Bassett, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's a really good rotation. As long as people can stay healthy, wink wink Scherzer
Met
specifically,
legend.
if he can stay healthy along with other people in that rotation, I think they could do a very good job. I think they have the potential to do a very good job. Bat wise, they're gonna have to land a guy like Bregman, another bat, just to have me going, oh, okay, all right, this is where they're at, this is where their heads at. Because if they add Bregman, that flips their off season right on a total tail on its tails. It gives them Bregman at third, Bo at short. You got Vlad, and you got some other people out. Dave Schneider at second base. Dalton Varsho. You got George Springer. You got Anthony Santander. That's a better team. Alejandro Kirk. That's a better team. That's a way better team than what they've got now. So I think it comes down to the Bregman signing for me to go, wait, this team can compete. But at the moment, I don't think that they're going to be up there. I think they're fighting for that fourth place spot. I think that's where they're going to be at. I
Yeah.
think the
Hmm.
Orioles, the Yankees, and the Red Sox are all three teams that are better than them currently. The only thing that would make me go, oh, wait a minute, is if Bregman signs with the Blue Jays. So, Matt, I don't know. What do you think about Scherzer going to the Blue Jays?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really move me when I saw it happen. But the Blue Jays do have money to spend. If Scherzer can stay healthy, if he is even a shell of himself, then like we said with Chris, they can honestly make a pretty solid push for the postseason. And like we were also saying with Chris, they're probably going to want to go all out if they really are in contention with Vlad and Bo potentially being their last years. So you do have the rotation of Scherzer, Gosman, Barrios, Bassett, like Manoa, like who knows, man, but like it's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. And the AL East is always considered one of the more competitive divisions. There were reports about Bregman and Pete Alonso, right? If the Blue Jays had a lot of money to spend, which they do, and they want to be aggressive, maybe they can make a last minute push for both of them. Like genuinely, who knows, man? But Scherzer to the Blue Jays itself, I feel like is just a domino. It's a domino, and just more things will follow suit. And that's really all I have to say on the matter, pretty much.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
with that being said, we're gonna get into our last topic of the day. We're filming during the day. I didn't even realize that, Matt. We're filming during the day for once.
I
Anyways,
know.
Haseong
Crazy.
Haseong Kim is going to the Rays. And again, we've mentioned the Devil Magic before in the past. Um, multiple times already during this podcast. But signs a 2-year deal, $29 million contract, and he's got an opt out after the first two seasons. First season, opt out after the first season. And there's a few things you got to keep in mind with Kim. Um, he's coming off an injury. He's coming off a shoulder injury, but he's going to make a return in May and is going to take over that shortstop role for the Rays. I think this was a good signing, but honestly, I think it was for the wrong team because there's so many other teams that could have used Ha-Seong Kim so much better, and I'm looking at one of the other teams that could have used him so much better. You tell me the Yankees couldn't shout a contract like that for him to maybe play like third base? I
They
don't
could
know.
have, man. I don't know why they didn't.
It's a cheap deal. It's a
Hmm.
cheap deal. He's
That's
got an
probably
opt out.
expensive for the Rays, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably, but it's a cheap deal. He's got an opt out after the first year, first season. Why that could have been very beneficial to the Yankees because Ha-Seong Kim is a good player, is a really good player. I don't think a lot of people seem to factor that in too when it comes to him, but he's a really good player, and I think he's gonna add something to the Rays, but it sure as hell ain't gonna be contender worthy, and sure as hell ain't gonna push them into the playoffs. The Rays have a lot of work to do, like a pretty good amount of work to do. They do got Junior Caminero coming up, and he's going to be an exciting sight to watch, with the Rays. But besides that, like I can't really think of much that they have off the top of my head. Which I mean, they have Yandy Diaz still, Ha-Seong Kim, now Junior Caminero, Brandon Lau still kicking it over there. And then a few younger guys, Palacios. I don't even know. I don't remember his first name. Don't know why I remember his last name, but he's on the squad. There's just a lot of moving pieces with that team. So I think it was a good move, but I think it was a move that this team should not have made. I don't know, Matt. What do you think? What are you thinking about
It,
that?
it's interesting because I don't think anyone would have expected him to go to the Rays. Like, if you go to free agency destination predictions, I don't think the Rays were on anyone's list. Truthfully, was not even on my radar. But like, yeah, it's a cheap deal. I mean, for the Rays, I guess that's like a majority of their payroll. But any team could have offered this to him, and I'm truly I'm wondering why. Is it because of the shoulder injury? Like he's coming back in May, at least expected. Like it's not the worst thing in the world, but he's a great player. I think he would have helped any team contend. The Rays, I don't think fall under that contending category, even though we do talk about their devil magic. Um, but it's interesting. It obviously helps their playoff odds. I mean, if there even are playoff odds, but he's a good player. He'll fit for them. Wouldn't be surprised if they trade him at the deadline. I think that might be the move just to maybe get some young guys. And the Rays are so good at developing prospects that they could develop those prospects into being the next, aces and Hall of Famers that they'll eventually trade in the future when they get too expensive. So it's interesting. But I don't really have much more else to say on Ha-Seong Kim, but good signing for the Rays. And, hopefully it works out for him and hopefully it works out for them.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be the difference maker, but it was a good signing nevertheless. It was pretty good for them. So congrats to the Rays for doing something pretty good in this offseason. Um, but yeah, with that being said, that about wraps up episode 46. Again, we really appreciate Chris for coming on.
Yep.
Means the world just to get a little bit of insight from the industry and how it all works over on that side. Instead of just being on our end and reacting to the deals that are done. Um,
Hmm.
so it's really cool always when we get to have him on. We plan to have him back on in March so we could talk some more baseball with him. But for the time being, we're on that road to our 50th episode of the Do You Know Ball podcast, which is incredible. If you told me that we were gonna get to 50 when we first started this, Matt, I would not have believed you. If you told me we were gonna do this for over a year and be consistent with it, I would not believe you. So very, very blessed, very happy to be in this spot right now. And yeah, we will catch you guys in the next one for
Yep.
episode 47, and we'll see you guys next time.